Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me here on the Ides of March, I believe.
We're only a few days
Yes.
away from the beginning of spring,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which the weather yesterday kind of belied that a little bit.
Well, but could have been a lot worse. It was okay.
We've got a lot to talk about this show, but let's start off following up on the last show. We did have on Saturday last the public vote on the high school.
Correct.
And the results were?
Results were that the town meeting vote that voted to bond for the new high school to borrow the money, which needed to pass town meeting by 2/3 vote, and it did. It did pass the election, the special election. I think by a count of 70-30%. Good turnout during the day. Almost 5,000 voters came out. So I think it said a statement about Wakefield and the direction that we're going. So was a very briskly run election. Town clerk did a great job, as she normally does, and polls are open for 13 hours. So everybody that wanted to vote certainly had a chance.
Yep.
Plus I'm not going to call it early voting because it really wasn't. It was absentee voting the week or so before, and there was no reason for absentee voting that was unacceptable. So it was a great job by Betsy Sharon, our clerk, and a good turnout, and the result that certainly mirrored town meeting that people wanted.
And on another note, there was another ceremony this morning that we should probably take note of.
Yes, today was the Wakefieldian Alliance Against Violence white ribbon ceremony, and that was held on the Library Plaza steps. A little bit chilly and breezy, but it was nice to be out in the sun. And I'm wearing my white ribbon here, and it really is very important that all of us, take a stand against of violence, especially violence of men upon women or girls, young women, and it's it is a societal problem, and it's Wakefield is not immune. We saw some horrible cases of this recently. The one in Andover, where a person killed his wife and his young child. I mean, these things do happen, and I think it's events like this that really highlight that these horrible events do happen, and really encourage the rest of us to become advocates, not bystanders, to speak out, to help people that are in these relationships that can go bad. And what a great turnout, and thank you to WCAT for filming it. So if you couldn't get out there at noon today in the library, really very moving ceremony. The best part, in my mind, or the most powerful part, was the young people that spoke. And two young men who go to Wakefield High School. They're juniors, seniors. Really spoke from their heart about how how we all need to take a part to prevent these items from happening. And a kind of a conglomeration group of different groups at the high school, musical groups, singers, that sang "Stand By Me" a cappella. And that was really, that was the finale of the show. And that was great. And then we were all freezing cold. So
It was time.
We had to leave.
It was time to get in.
But I am wearing my white ribbon today. And
But at least it was sunny today and not.
it was sunny today.
Yep.
It was a little breezy, but sunny. So.
But now, looking forward, this is going to be the first of two annual shows on the upcoming annual town meeting, which is scheduled to begin Monday, May 15th at 7 p.m. in the Veterans Memorial Auditorium at the Galvin. And it will be Monday and Thursday sessions until it's completed.
Correct. Yes. And I think it'll be great to be, I'm not going to say back in the Galvin because we were there, last year,
Right.
town meeting.
Right.
It is certainly a great venue acoustically and comfort-wise, and it's really wonderful that we have that facility in town. And yeah, we're going back to the Monday, Thursday for the spring or the annual town meeting, and it's called. I kind of think of it as a spring town meeting, but the annual town meeting pursuant to the charter. And yeah, the gavel goes down Monday the 15th at 7 o'clock. I will tell you that the warrant is still open, so there's still ability of 10 citizens to put something on the warrant if they wish.
Right, the deadline for that, I believe, is Friday, April 7th
Right,
at 12 noon.
12 noon. Yep. So we have time to put it together for the package.
Right, and a lot of those are the citizen initiative articles, aren't they?
Yeah, everything else should be in from the different boards.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and of course, the big one that we start off with every year is the annual budget,
Yes.
which everyone loves to get into.
Yeah. Yeah. The town meeting recommendation book. Well, let's say it's 20 pages long. Probably 17 or 16 is the budget.
Just the budget.
Just the budget. And I will tell you that I think Wakefield does a great job of breaking out and identifying almost each department, really each department on there. So there's a lot of information, not only in the warrant book, but that book will be available online, hopefully a couple of weeks or 3 weeks ahead of the meeting, so people can really look at it, ask questions. The town council goes through every department's budget, basically line by line. Then there's the finance committee, and all of those meetings are open session.
Right.
And the recordings of those meetings are available on the town website. WCAT is great to add them on there and get them ready for us. So it is certainly there's plenty of ways to get information.
Well, and especially for citizens, there's the comparison to last year's budget and what's being
year's, right.
requested this year. For new residents, though, let's just hash over some well-trod ground in the past. We start with a zero-sum budget each year, correct?
Basically, yes. Yeah, we look at every line item on our side.
So it isn't like some towns who will take last year's, add whatever percentage
No,
they think is.
no. You will see some budgets, some line items that will go down, some will go up, some will stay the same. We really try to look for efficiencies and we look for trends. I mean, if we find that, we've been budgeting, $100,000 a year, and these are all fictitious numbers, $100,000 a year for typewriter repair. Let's use something that doesn't happen anymore, right? $100 a year for typewriter repair. And we find that for the last, 3 or 4 years, we've utilized 20.
Right.
That's a trend
Right.
that we would, move that line item down. We're probably spending a lot more in software licenses. That's going the other way. So it is so every line item is looked at, and I'll tell you, department heads are encouraged to, speak their mind, to look for efficiencies, to tell me what efficiencies they have, or tell our town accountant what efficiencies they think they have, and areas that they think they need to be increased to meet the needs of the public. And, we've had a great history of give and take between, myself, the department heads, the town accountant, the town council, and the finance committee. And the ultimate decision, however, does lie with the voters at town meeting.
Right.
And it's, I think we do a very, very deliberate and very well detailed presentation and process. And, I often, will, when I present a lot of the budgets, but it's a work of a lot of people. I'm just the person at the podium. And then we'll do all this work, and you've seen my binders. They're, this thick.
Oh, yes.
And, it'll be presented, and then
We'll probably see version 1 on the next show.
Exactly. It'll be on the next show. And then there's no comments, no questions. And then I'll say, geez, I did a lot. I was ready for all those, hopefully
Right.
those esoteric questions. But maybe that's because we did a good job explaining it. So we should feel good about that.
And also, if you didn't have it, then the question.
Yeah.
We know how it works.
Exactly.
One of the things that determines the budget each year, and I should add for new residents that the budget is for the fiscal year, which begins July 1st,
Exactly.
not for the calendar year. So this would be fiscal year 2024 we're working
Yes.
on. But and we've talked about this in past years too, has the State House released even a preliminary
Yes.
cherry sheet for the coming
Yes,
fiscal
the
year?
preliminary cherry sheet came out a few weeks ago. Normally, it comes out at the beginning of January. But when there's a change in administration, they get a little bit longer. So this came out basically on March 1st. You know, I and the Finance Committee and the Town Council talk about this way back in October when we have the tri-board meeting with the school committee and the Finance Committee and the Town Council, where we're projecting or forecasting the state aid to come in. And that's we really don't know. I mean, I kind of try to read the tea leaves, and our team looks at what state revenues are doing and what have you. So we did see in this budget a good increase in Chapter 70 money, which is the education portion. And we did see a less than overwhelming increase in unrestricted local aid. And I think unrestricted local aid was about 2%, and school aid came in at about Chapter 70 at about 8%. I had predicted around a net of around 13+ million in state aid, and I think that the first pass came in at around 12,900,000. So I felt pretty good. I felt pretty close. I was like 98, 99% there. I wish that it was higher and I was off on that end, but this is the first round. I mean, there'll be other rounds. It'll go through the State House, and we'll see what happens. What is a little bit more difficult for a town form of government, particularly an open town meeting, is that we need to set our budget a little bit earlier in the process. And that is because town meetings take time.
Right.
There are, you know, if it's an open town meeting, there could be unlimited questions and discussions. And, you know, we could go to town meeting and not do one article on the first night, right? I mean, that is possible and could happen.
And we have seen
And we
that.
have seen that in the past.
There's the notorious meeting some decades ago that went from the beginning of April until almost July 4th.
Almost, yeah. And here's the problem is that we may not have, and probably won't have, the final state numbers, and usually don't, when town meeting is making those decisions. Now, we're usually close, and usually very close, and we have a pretty good idea. But, you know, that is a little bit of a disadvantage of the town meeting process, because, you know, we can't hold town meeting on June 30th.
Right.
And vote the budget, because it may not happen. Now, cities, a lot of cities will have their budget approvals the last week in June, because it's a city council. There's, you know, 7 people or 11 people making the decision, and that's going to happen much easier. You can roll it in. We don't have that. Under our charter, the town meeting is supposed to be, you know, within 30 days after the first Monday in April, although the town council can make it a little bit later under state law. Which we do. We try to keep it, you know, traditionally in that, you know, end of April, you know, first 2 weeks of May timeframe. So yeah, the 15th will start off, and you're right, the first one will be the budget, and you're looking at, you know, $110 million, roughly.
And last year was?
Last year was it, you know, 106, 105.
So it's pretty much under inflation too.
It is right now.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky the last few years. I mean, the other items that I look at is I look at where we are with our tax levy, which really is the only thing I know. I know for certain going into the budget, I know what we are collecting, or what we have assessed to collect on July 1st, 2023, 2022. I know what that number is, okay? I then can take that and multiply that by 2.5%, add 2.5% to it, I should say. And that is what the tax levy portion of the budget would be for the next fiscal year. I know that number. That is, you know, that's math problem. That's easy. What I don't know is I don't know what state aid is going to be, and we just talked about that, although we've been pretty close over the years. I also don't know the other big revenue source, which are town receipts.
Mm-hmm.
And those are receipts from paying for parking tickets or building permits to uh, paying for liquor licenses
Right,
to paying for car excise tax.
right.
And car excise tax is the largest portion of that. You know, I would hope that we'd get, 5 million in car excise taxes, which means that people have to buy cars, which is always very good for the economy in general. You hear that talk about. Because car excise tax about that is that if everybody, it's kind of a different than other taxes. If everybody in Wakefield had the same car they had the year before, and no new cars were purchased, okay? Everyone had the
Right.
exact same car. Our revenue from excise taxes would actually go down.
Right, because each
Because
year it's
each
less
year
for
less because your car, and you can see it when it comes to you, your car is valued less, less when you drive it out of the parking lot, really. And every year, so that that goes on the sliding scale. Now, there are new homes in Wakefield, with new people moving in. It seems like, and I laugh, it seems like, once every child turns 16 right now, and gets their driver's license, they get another car, whether it's a hand-me-down and the person gets a new one in town. So that hasn't happened over the year, but there have been years where the economy really is bad. And, those don't increase is what, from a revenue standpoint, what we would like.
And we were seeing that 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, to a certain
We were,
extent.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So there's a lot of moving parts to the budget. So, Article 1 is not just waving a magic wand and, yeah, this looks good. And there's a lot of discussion going into that.
and usually a lot of questions that are serious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which is the people who do tend to come to town meeting regularly tend to know what they want to see in the budget and
Right.
what needs to be asked.
And have important questions. I mean, you could see a budget line item that, let's say, is reduced by $20,000. Not a huge amount in a $110 million spending package.
Right.
But that may be very important to that one person coming in and may generate a lot of discussion. So it is, it's a very interesting process, and my staff does a great job of helping me, preparing me. We have great department heads that can really answer almost any question, from, geez, how many trees did we plant last year?
Right.
To how many miles of road did we pave? How many new sidewalks did we put in? To how many fences did we repair? What are we going to do about, because snow and ice was lower this year than it could have been? What happens to that extra money?
Right.
Actually, it flows back to the town, so it's not expended. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of give and take, and I actually get a lot of emails and questions beforehand. And
Sure.
I think we do something that a lot of other communities don't do, is that before town meeting, we have kind of, and it's usually right here in WCAT studios, so people can see it, then live or at their leisure, to kind of go through the budget and talk about highs and lows and
Right.
where we're going and where we think the financial picture is going. And I will tell you that, and I said this in October, Wakefield has enjoyed and continues to enjoy a pretty good fiscal outlook, but it is challenging. It's becoming more challenging each year as, costs go up for everything, and our revenues don't necessarily have
Right.
the ability to match that. So, there's still a lot of moving parts, but we've got 2 months, so we'll figure that out.
And other aspects of town meeting that will be coming together, there are the usual sort of caretaking articles each year for the veterans groups and what they need.
And that'll be part of the budget. The veterans is part of the budget.
Right, but I was thinking more along the lines of, as we get out of Article 1, we will get certain requests for budgeting and such that,
Yeah.
that are outside the normal.
Right. Well,
You know.
yeah, because then you go from Article 1, we go to Article 2. Imagine that. And Article 2 has traditionally been the capital expenditures.
Right.
And, really think about how that is not unlike your own home. What do you plan? What do we think we need and what do we plan to expend for next
Right.
year? And, in your own home, you may sit down and, decide with your partner that, geez, we need to redo the front porch. It's falling apart, or we need to put in new railings, or we need to put on a new roof. That same discussion, in fact, there's a meeting tonight, so at our next meeting, we'll probably have that finalized. We're going through every single aspect of the budget, of the infrastructure of the town, from buildings to vehicles, to roads, to sidewalks, to see playgrounds, what we want to spend, for that upkeep. And I think, David, you'll remember that we didn't have the ability to do a lot of this
Right.
years ago.
Right.
I think capital for, in 2008, 2009 was less than $300,000. And you couldn't do a lot for that.
No, and unfortunately, in the years since, we've been playing catch up on some items.
Exactly. And
as we've been able to increase the capital budget.
yeah, so the capital budget is right around $2 million.
Yep.
We have a very robust and very carefully and thoughtful capital outlay committee, and they really want more on that budget. Everyone wants more on that article. I'm trying to say, guys, we gotta hold down a little bit.
And that's sometimes when we get the most robust debate,
Yeah,
especially among voters, is, well, why aren't we looking at this, or why
Right.
aren't we looking at, X, Y, or Z?
Right.
And it's often things that everybody recognizes are needed, but just isn't a priority right now.
right. Well, you know what it's like? We decided, well, let's say we decided, we had a vision a few years ago to kind of work on one playground a year. So, we'd maybe do the Nacella Field playground, or the Yule area, or the Doyle School. Like, one of the items that would have been in the capital plan is a new, better accessible playground at the Doyle Early Child Center at the Doyle School. Now, luckily, we were able to get a grant for that. Okay, so that's going to be done. But, playgrounds have gotten incredibly expensive. And you look at them, Greenwood, we did one in Greenwood a couple of years ago.
Right.
And it's, a better surface so that everybody can use it. It's
The one behind the school.
one behind the school.
Yes.
So there's a lot of those things that are happening too. We want to keep up our vehicles. We went through a period a few years ago that we couldn't. And what happens is they get more, the repairs run up, and
Right.
you can't deliver services to the community. I mean, we were replacing a number of DPW vehicles, dump trucks and the such that were 1990s version. We don't see too many of those anymore.
Right.
Some of them still run pretty good. We'll keep those, but some of them weren't. We needed to replace them. But I think we're in a much better place now than we were. But it was a systematic.
Right.
You can't jump from 0 to 2 million in a day. It's going to have to be phased in over a number of years, and that's
Right.
where and I get it. Everyone wants everything immediately, so that's where a little give and take happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a time not too long ago, before the new fire station, when we had to spend extra money on custom-built fire trucks to
Exactly.
fit in the old fire station. We don't have
Exactly,
to
yeah.
do that anymore, and
Yeah.
we're saving tens of thousands
Right,
of
or
dollars.
maybe more in the latest ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was and/or in that case, and this was on the way back machine. Let's go. Was the garage, if it did fit, was the garage sturdy enough to handle the weight? So there was that question too,
Right,
when it was years
Right.
and years ago.
right.
But that was
They're
before
worried
our
about
time,
the
Dave.
floor.
That was before our
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Okay. The other things that tend to come up what are we looking at, for instance, and new residents find this one interesting because they don't think about this until it's really brought up. One of the items that has to be taken care of with respect to the budget is accepting money from the WMGLD.
Correct.
The light department actually pays the town part of its profits each
Right.
year that go into the town budget,
Correct.
which also reduces taxpayer.
It is another sense of another source of revenue.
Yeah,
Right. Yes. So that is an annual budget article, and it really is. And I know that if you're new to town, you don't understand it. Why don't we just tax them like you tax me on my home?
Right.
Well, it's a little bit different because it's a municipal corporation. It's
Right.
owned by the town of Wakefield. We can't necessarily tax ourselves. It just doesn't make sense. So what happens is that every year there is a kind of a discussion or an agreement between the finance committee and the town town council and the light department that, the light department pays money in lieu of taxes, really called a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. And the town meeting actually authorizes the Board of Assessors to use that money in setting the tax rate. Because if we couldn't use that money, then we would have to tax all the people for that money.
right.
So it's close to $1 million a year, and that will be coming in, and that's usually within the first 5 articles of town. We probably will use a consent agenda again for some of the innocuous articles. That, I think, maybe has become one of them because there's no discussion on it over the last 10 years, but anyone can pull that out so we can see what happens there.
Right, right. And the consent is just another way of streamlining the process.
Right. So what the consent agenda says is that, and for those of us that have been, I would say, students of town meeting or attendees of town meeting, there are a handful of articles that really there is little or no discussion on, and really none. And I can go back, I keep my books for every year, and I can say, hey, on this particular subject, there was 0 discussion and it was a
Right.
unanimous vote. So what the consent agenda allows us to do is to say, let's take articles 6, 7, 8, 9, which are, the articles that have a historic, non-participation on them. Let's take them all under one vote.
Right.
Okay. And and we call it a consent agenda, let's consent to take these items out of order, and let's consent to vote on them as part of the consent agenda. And if even one person wishes to debate that article, we pull it off. And that actually did happen. And I forget what the article was a few years ago when we tried it the first time. There was someone that wanted to discuss one of the articles we had on the consent agenda. And so fine, we pulled that off. We did the other 4 or 5. And then when we got to that article, there was no questions at all on it. So I don't know if maybe I didn't make myself clear or what have you. So it's kind of interesting. So I think this year we're looking at, 15, 16 articles or so in the Springtown meeting. Nothing really outlandish. There shouldn't be anything huge.
She'll be short because often we
hope-
go 25, 27 articles.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hit that number this year. But you know what? There's still time. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now is not the time
Now
to
is not the
predict
time
those
to predict
things.
that, yeah.
Well, we'll pick this up again in the next show. Steve, thank you.
And we'll have good hard numbers for you in the next show for most articles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.